The lore behind Doug Rattman. Deep underground, within the Aperture Laboratories, the scientists were hard at work creating new technology. In 1985, Doug Rattman was in charge of the maintenance of the Aperture image format. While he worked on the format, his colleagues were working on something more interesting: a genetic lifeform and disk operating system. Working at the facility, Rattman suffered with schizophrenia, which he kept at bay with antipsychotic pills. Although typically quiet and an artistic type, to his colleagues, he was shown to be sane and level-headed, although showing skepticism towards the GLaDOS project. During the construction of this system, Doug visited one of his colleagues, Henry, while he was working on the AI. The project had had some pushback due to the system attempting to kill the scientists every time it had been turned on. To this, they had decided to create a morality core which would act on GLaDOS as her conscience. Although Henry was confident that this would stop GLaDOS's murderous tendencies, Doug worried that it wouldn't work, as he believed you can always ignore your conscience. When activated, GLaDOS locked down the facility and floods the enrichment center with neurotoxins. Although many of his colleagues died, Doug became one of the few survivors. Unable to leave the facility, Doug navigated the test chambers, avoiding the cameras to the best of his ability. Using his knowledge of the chambers and its technologies, he was able to open up wall sections of the chambers, and within these, he created dens where he would be safe from GLaDOS and her turrets. Within the dens, surviving on scraps of food he could find around the facility, he used computer heat sinks as makeshift ovens. Although safe from GLaDOS, his schizophrenia began to kick in, and he realized that he only had a few pills with him to keep his sanity. While navigating the chambers, GLaDOS would taunt him about his schizophrenia, even at one point attempting to convince him that the whole situation was in his head and simply a part of his paranoia. As an intelligent man, he ignored her, aware of the reality of his situation. Seeing him surviving on small amounts of food, GLaDOS offers him cake, which he believed simply to be another lie. Requiring help to escape the facility, Doug breaks into the file room and looks at the test subjects currently in line to be tested. He finds Chell, who had been categorized as not to be tested, as she was abnormally stubborn and never gives up, ever. Seeing Chell as his way of survival, he puts her to the top of the testing list so that she would be the next to be woken up. Still barely surviving in the facility, Doug begins to run low on his antipsychotic pills and decides to save them for the day that GLaDOS wakes Chell. Slowly but surely, without his medication, he begins to lose sanity and his schizophrenia takes over. Aware that Chell will wake up eventually, he spends hours drawing on walls, painting murals, arrows and hints so that she would also become aware of the situation and help him escape. Stuck and alone for all this time, and suffering with his sanity, he becomes obsessed with a companion cube, which he begins to talk to, believing that the cube was sentient and talking back. The cube in reality, a projection of his safe and logical thoughts, which gave him advice on how to avoid the traps set up by GLaDOS. After waiting, Chell finally awakens and begins testing. Now, Doug takes his final 2 antipsychotic pills and observes her as she navigates through the chambers, his scribbles and warnings helping her navigate GLaDOS's traps. With her stubborn nature, Chell doesn't give up and she makes it to GLaDOS after the sentient being attempts to murder her. After a brief confrontation, Chell destroys GLaDOS's cores and subsequently defeats her, resulting in Chell being pulled into a gravitational vortex formed by the destruction of GLaDOS's generators. This vortex pulls Chell to the surface. Now finally free, Doug makes it to the surface. Unfortunately, he sees an unconscious Chell being dragged back into the facility by a party escort bot. Full of guilt, and against his companion Cube's objections, Doug re-enters the facility to save her. Now back within the facility, Doug notices that Chell has been placed in long-term relaxation within the relaxation center, but due to GLaDOS's destruction, the power grid had been knocked offline. To save her, he takes it upon himself to restore the power. With his antipsychotic pills now kicking in, his sanity slowly returns, and with this, his companion cube, which had been his source of safety and logic, is no longer able to help him. With this, Doug chooses the wrong way and is shot in the leg by a turret, resulting in him falling unconscious. Waking up shortly after, Doug's medication had worn off, and so, with the help of his companion cube, he realizes that he can save Chell by patching her into the reserve power grid, which in turn would place her in stasis. Although possibly subjecting her to a sleep indefinitely if undiscovered, activating her life support, he questioned what was worse, death or her sleeping for many, many years. With Chell safe and injured himself, he puts himself into a relaxation vault and goes to sleep with his companion cube beside him. It is unknown whether Doug woke up from his sleep, or whether he remains inside of his cryochamber to this day. What is known is that he was willing to give his life for someone that he had never formally met. Hello test subjects, thank you for watching this episode on Doug Rattman. What did you think? What would you like me to cover next? If you like this, give it a like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.